All right, I think we're just gonna start. We only have 12 people, but we'll start anyways. Good morning once again. And so today we'll just finish this topic, and we're not gonna continue with a new topic, but rather I would rather use that time to finish marking your tests, and then release the grades. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. And all right, so yesterday we just looked at some of the examples. We looked at the definitions of the different categories and how we can use the Bloom Taxonomy in the classroom, the importance that it plays. And here we've also looked at some of the examples of questions that you can ask and the type of activities that you can also use in the classroom. For example, in remembering, these are the type of examples that you can use. Okay, so that's what we have in remembering. And then we have got understanding, and it's a list of it. It's quite long. And then we've got apply, evaluate, questions. We have got examples of questions and then the activities. Things like write a report. And then we have got creating. All right. And yeah, that creating is the last one. Now we are going to look at another example, like a very specific example when it comes to using the different levels within a classroom, within an activity. For example, so this is now as a final example. Let us now look at some of these steeped questions, questioning activity, in which a series of questions are asked. Then when they are asked, when the learners respond, it can be either written or verbal. And that gradually moved the levels of Bloom Taxonomy. Excuse me. Such an activity could be carried out during one single lesson. Okay, so here we've got some example, and this is just it's an activity. It's an example of an activity of different questions that you can ask the learners within one lesson, and there you are. Tapping in all the different cognitive processes. And I really like this activity. Like the questioning, because it's really starting from, the lowest level, and then it goes up to creating. And when you start with such activity where you start with the lowest level and then gradually moving to the highest level, that helps the learners so much in such a way that it will help them, tackle the last cognitive process with so much ease. All right, rather than just saying, okay, here is a story. Okay, rather than just saying, here is a story, read it, and then come up with a conclusion, or come up with a different conclusion. Here you are really like building on the students' knowledge until the point where they can use the complex cognitive processes, within their brains. All right, and this is really like a good idea, and I hope you get something out of this example. All right, when you go and present your lessons in your classrooms. All right, so we have got the first question, which is, what can you remember about the story? So which means they have read the story, or they have heard. It could be either written or it could be oral. All right, and then summarize the story in your own words. All right, in your own words. So that's tackling the second level of the Bloom Taxonomy categories. So the first one is remembering. And then the next one is suggest how the main lessons in the story could help other young people. So this is now application, getting whatever information that they got from the story, and then they are applying it in a different context, and here is helping other young people. And then why did the different characters in the story behave the way they did? So here we are analyzing, right? Why did they behave the way they did? Okay. And then evaluate, evaluating. So evaluate the strengths of the main character's decision to leave. Like, why did the main character leave? Now they are critiquing, they need to critique the decision by looking at the strength of why the character left and why is this a good thing, for example. All right. And then number 6, rewrite the ending of this story to show a different outcome. Rewrite the ending. So which means they are not necessarily using the old conclusion, all right, not the same conclusion that the story had, but they have to come up with their own conclusion, all right, and then they need to deduce that conclusion from what they have read, from what they remember, what they understand, what they have also applied, that they have analyzed and evaluated. All right, so that's what we have there. That's an example. Do you have questions regarding those? It really does help, understand the taxonomy a little bit better and how you could possibly use it in your classroom. Do you have questions? Okay, I can see that people are typing. That's a good question. Is it compulsory? It is a great consideration for effective teaching and learning. And right, it's a good consideration. It's a good consideration. I mean, like when you are creating a class activity, for instance, you don't necessarily have to go like, oh, this is remembering, this is understanding, this is application. But with this understanding, all right, knowing that you are starting from the lowest up to the highest, it builds on, it affords the learners scaffolding. So what do we mean by scaffolding? Helping them as much as possible, as much as you can, in order for them to to complete the task. All right. And in every one of your lesson, you don't have to go like, oh, what category is this? But it's a good way to really it's something to think about when you're creating your lessons, to make them more effective and helpful for the learners as well, and not just for your teaching, but for the learners as well, because we are in the business of serving the learners. All right. And because it's not every day that I ask myself like what cognitive level this is, but then at the very beginning, when I look at an objective, I have to ask myself what cognitive level this question or this objective is, and then how best can I really help my learners attain this objective within the lesson. All right. And I think this will make more sense when we look at the different skills. All right. This will make more sense when we look at the different skills and their objectives. Did that answer your question? I feel like I'm rambling. Okay. Miss, will skipping one of the Bloom Taxonomy level affect the learning process drastically? I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. Not necessarily, because it always depends on where the students, like where are they in terms of their cognitive development. What do they know already regarding whatever, let's say, content you are presenting in the lesson. All right. And I think we'll talk about that shortly regarding the learning process. And I hope that will answer your question a little bit more. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So the framework is logical, So each question becomes increasingly more challenging in terms of cognitive demand placed on the learners. All right. So which means it becomes more challenging. And then, okay, let's say you only did this very first question within your classroom as a warm-up. All right. What do they remember about this story? And then they said whatever that they have remember about the story. Okay, and then you jump to the sixth question, rewrite the ending of the story to show a different outcome. I mean, they can remember, but then maybe they don't understand a number of aspects within the story, all right, which will help them create a different outcome. Then obviously there you might need to go back a little bit to other levels to really help them with creating a meaningful conclusion. All right. Stepped questions like this can be set as a single activity with learners working individually or in pairs. Okay, so here, okay, I wanted to mention that, okay, stepped questions like this can be set in a single activity with learners working individually or in pairs. And then when you have such activity, I mean, when you have such activities, you have to make sure that, I mean, if your objective of if the objective of the lesson is to let's say come up with a conclusion, so that's an activity, I mean that's the objective, like the main objective of the lesson, then obviously with these other parts of the activity, you don't have to spend so much time on that activity. For example, what can you remember about the story? This is an activity that every learner can do at the same time. All right, they are working in pairs. Let's say they are working in pairs, and then you ask them to talk to each other. All right, everybody's talking to their pair within the lesson. Like, you give them 2 minutes, talk about what you remember about the story. Okay, that's just 2 minutes, and then you say another 2 minutes to give feedback within to the class, asking only a few pairs to give their answers, like, what do you remember about the story? And then you point at a few pairs to just write down some of the answers on the board. All right, that should not take more than, let's say, 5 minutes. And then summarize the story in your own words to show an understanding. Then again, you ask them in pairs again to talk to each other quickly rather than writing down. Okay, and suggest how the main lesson in this story could help other young people. And then there maybe you can have them work on that point a little bit longer. Let's say maybe 6 minutes or so. They work in, they come into groups. Like let's say we have pairs, right? The 4 people, the 2 pairs can come together to create a group, and then they come up with their ideas of like, how will this lesson be applied to? How can this be applied to young people, for instance? And then moving on, analyzing the character, and then again, have them share, only choosing a few groups, all right, to share their ideas. And it shouldn't take long, because it's about time after all. And then analyze, and then they do this one, analyzing the character. And then when they do this, they can do it even individually. And then you just walk around to see what their answers are. And you don't have to read everybody's, and then get some sort of feedback, like mention some of the answers that they have. All right, they have written that you have read, and so that everybody is on the same track, right, of what you really expect them to answer. And then if you have read some of the ideas that the learners seem to be off track, like they really don't understand what needs to be needs to be done when it comes to analyzing, then you mention that within the classroom. And then evaluate the strength of the main character. You decide, is it going to be individual, pair, or group? And groups and pairs always help accelerate the amount of time that they spend on an activity. So it lessens, all right? It lessens time because they are having ideas from different people. Then that can really help them, get to the answer quickly. And then rewriting, and then they start. I mean, if you have enough time, they can start working on their own conclusion in the ending of the story, and that could be an individual work as well. And an individual work, they start working on that, and if they don't finish, they finish at home, and then they bring the work to the class the next day. All right, so that's just an idea of like what you could possibly do. And then with that, you have really tapped into a number of skills. So there's reading, there's speaking, there's listening, and then there's writing. All right, so that's just an example of like how you could handle this. And it's tapping on the different cognitive levels. And yet again, it's really integrating the lesson using the integrative approach, which was part of your test, whereby you combine the different skills within the classroom. All right. And then there is a differentiation by outcome, as some of the learners will get further than others, right? Depending on their prior knowledge and understanding. So that is now to say, as Ausha has asked, will skipping some of the Bloom taxonomy levels affect the learning process drastically? It depends on what the learners already know. Right? What skills do they already know? And I think if we look at the different objectives and different skills within the lesson, I think that's going to make so much more sense, right? For example, if you have, let's say, the last is to create a conclusion at the ending of the story. Let's say if they have done an activity similar to this already, all right? If they've done an activity similar to writing an ending of a story, you have already taught them how do you write a conclusion, what does it involve, what do you need to do, what do you need to think about, do you understand? Then when you ask them again for the second time at a different lesson, all right, or let's say in a different lesson, then it's not going to take so much time. All right, it's not going to affect the learning process as much because they already know. It's like a revision, but in a different context. All right, does that now answer your question, Ausha? Okay, good. And we are moving on. How are we doing on time? Okay, it's not so bad. All right, and then okay, this is more information. So all these examples highlight the Bloom taxonomy provide a strong basis for tailoring questions and bespoke activities in which we adapt and modify questions and activities in order to more closely meet the needs of the learners. All right, we need to meet the needs of the learners, and we need to give them as much support as possible, because I know that when we get into classes, okay, this is something that I have observed with a number of students. When you go and during observation TP, they'll just say summarize this story, but then they have not really laid a foundation to help them summarize. They have not taught them how do you summarize, what are some of the steps that you need to follow when you are summarizing. Do you understand? Like there are a number of things like this that we don't provide support for our learners as much. We just expect them to maybe perform miracles, all right? Or maybe, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we we get excited to make life difficult for the learners because our experiences, maybe some of our teachers had made life so difficult for us. But no, we don't have to continue this trend. Like, we need to scaffold, provide support for the learners. All right. For instance, the teacher could start with a series of remembering questions or activities before moving on to the comprehension. Again, it depends on how at the level that they are. But don't always assume that, oh, because these are grade 12 learners, they should know these things. Don't assume that. Always provide, make it so much easy. Build on different knowledge, all right? And then it may well become apparent at this stage that the learners are getting stuck at this level. So when you see that they are getting stuck at a certain level, then you have to move back a little to help them, all right, so that they accomplish a certain level. And then the point is, depending on the answers elicited, the teacher can move up the taxonomy more quickly or more slowly until the appropriate level of challenge is reached. All right, so I think that is very explanatory. Like, you can always move back to support your learners to move, to bypass a certain cognitive level that they are being challenged on. Having arrived to the appropriate level of challenge, successful teaching would pursue question stems and relevant activities such as one listed to help push the learner's cognition, or to help them become unstuck in an area that were previously too challenging. All right, so you can use the examples that are given, to always help your learners. All right, when you see that maybe jumping to evaluation was done prematurely, then you have to move back a little bit, like using a number of questions or activities that will help them build on their knowledge in order to accomplish the evaluation level. And evaluation level. And then we can look at this in terms of obtaining an objective. Let's say if the objective is within the evaluation level, then how do you then attain this objective? Because with our learning context, we always have to refer back to the syllabus, or the scheme of work is the one, if that's the one that you are using at that school. We need to attain, or we need to practice, or we need to cover all these objectives, because we don't know what the learners are going to be assessed on, all right, when it comes to the final examination. Unfortunately, we have to think about the final examination as well. As much as we are creating or developing the different skills within our learners, we also have to consider the examination. Like, we don't want to disadvantage our learners within the lessons, all right? We have to cover as many or all objectives before they go and sit for their examination. Okay? All right, before we start the activity, do you have other questions? Right? No questions? Okay, now we are moving on. Let's test our knowledge. What do you think or remember about the different skills? All right, we are going to look at, I took a few, very few objectives and / competencies from the syllabus, and then I want us to see where do they fall. All right, which category can we categorize this? Can we categorize these objectives or competencies? All right, so here we are going to use our remembering, cognitive process, our understanding, our evaluation, obviously, application not so much, evaluation. I guess application, yes, we can say. And okay, we are not creating. You are not creating. I've already created. All right, so the first one. So which cognitive category does the following objective or competency best fit? So we have this objective. At the end of the lessons, learners will be able to listen, sift, sort information to use graphic organizers using graphic organizer, and then they categorize the information, and then you can write A, B, C, D, or E. All right, what you think. There's no right or wrong. Okay, well, we can't really say that. I mean, if you make a mistake, it's okay. It's acceptable, all right, within this lesson that we are. Just try your best. We are not going to ridicule anyone. So I want everybody to give an answer. Is it A, B, C, D, E, or F? A, B, C, D, E, F. What do you think? I'll give you a minute, and then I want to find an answer. All right, so we have got D, analyze. Okay, from Selma. Okay, we've got C. All right, what do others think? Oh,
You are now unmuted.
what do you think? Maybe I should ask, do you know what is a graphic organizer? Yes or no? Maybe I should have asked that first. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. A graphic organizer is things like, do you know spider webs? Spider webs? Like, for example, a teacher will write a topic in the, spider web, right? Like a topic within the circle, and then you put, legs on the spider, spider, and then you categorize. Let's say you have got an essay on COVID-19, right? Yeah, mind map. Yes, basically, yes. Mind map is part of the graphic organizer. All right. Or let's say you have got an essay, and then there'll be a box on top to write the topic, and then you divide. Let's say that the essay is about advantages and the impact of using technology, right? Using technology, and then you are categorizing the information. Let's say what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages, or what is the impact of technology on the learners' minds, and then you now organize the information. All right, so okay, with that, let's look. We have got D, C, C, D, C, D, and then we have 1B, and I think I should have given you this activity with what do you say? With the notes, and then I think referring back to that would be great. Would have been better, I think. A maybe. Okay. It's confusing, right? But in this case, I think I will go with most of the people who mentioned D, because it's analyzing the information and putting them into categories. So it will be D, right? And then I think I should have given you the notes first before we have just tackled this, all right? But then I'm not gonna write the correct answer there. I want you to go through it again with the notes later. But now we just go through them quickly. And then the next one, at the end of the lesson, learners will be able to use standard language in official or formal situations, such as talking to authorities, at ceremonies, and in interviews. What do you think? So it's like they need to use standard language in an interview. What will that be? A, B, C, D. All right. And I think C does absolutely, it will work here. So let's say if you have specific official language or phrases, for instance, that you want them to use in a different context, then apply can work here. But then if they are just using their own, I think C really does work best here. And then the next one, learners will be able to, at the end of the lesson, learners will be able to report or retell content of the text. A, B, C, D, E, F. Or F. Okay, I like A or B and the head thing. That expression of like, oh, I have no idea. Like, what is happening? Okay. In this case, I think it's A, but then it would have been B if we asked them to retell or report on the content of the text in their own words, like by how they understood it. Then it will be B, like in their own words. But then just retelling it, especially just retelling it as it is without them, really changing it to show that they understood it, then it will be A. Okay, it's a kind of yeah. Let me just stick to that. Hausha, you're writing. Should we move on? Okay. Yeah, it can be a little challenging. Yes, it can be a little challenging. Or maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. Okay, the next one, at the end of the lesson, learners will be able to construct informed opinion and attitudes. What do you think? What do you think, quickly? We don't have much time anymore left. I love the emojis. And here we have, okay, thank you. And here you can see it's construct, which means they have to create their own informed opinion and attitudes, right? They are not necessarily criticizing the opinions within the text or the attitudes within the text. So they're not evaluating in any sense, all right? They are constructing their own informed opinion or an attitude. So I think the best will be F here, okay? And I know, when we write objectives, there are different ways to write objectives. There are certain objectives and competencies that are more general, and then there are those that are in the middle, and then there are those that are very, very specific. When it comes to our syllabus, I don't know which one they have really used because it depends on how and who wrote the objectives and competencies. Some of them are not as specific, and we can see this, all right? We can see from this activity that they are not very specific, but I think in the end, it will depend on what exactly, all right? For example, opinion regarding what. So when it comes to the activity that you do, then I think the activity will be more specific than the objective, right? But they need to know how to construct informed opinion and attitude. And then for them to come up with an opinion or an attitude, an opinion could be, okay, let's say a conclusion in, for example, then they will be very much creating. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. And then we've got, all right, we have to go. At the end of the lesson, learners will be able to determine or clarify the meaning of unknown words using context or reference material. Reference materials, we're talking about things like encyclopedia or dictionary. So which one will that be? They're determining the meaning. Which one will that be? So here it's like they have to say, what is the meaning of a certain word? What will that be? Let's say you've given them a text and then you have underlined a number of words, right? And you're asking them, what does this word mean? So which one will that be? Okay, so here we're talking about the meaning of a word. All right, different, okay, word. Like we have got vocabulary, a number of them that are underlined, they are bolded, and we want to find meaning. I think the best here, it's not so much of evaluating, right? You are not evaluating anything. It's so much of showing that you understood the meaning of the word. So B, I feel like B will be the best here because you want them to show the meaning. Do they understand what the word means? Okay, so understanding, I feel like, will be the best one here. And then I think this is our last one. Last. Learners will be able to describe a problem faced and the steps to solve it. Which one will that be? And I want us to focus more. That's why it's very oh yeah, no, it's not a problem. Like steps to solve a problem. What do you think? All right. And I can understand why you would say C. I could understand that. But Maria, what is your answer? Quickly, just give your answer. So I feel like, okay, describe, like here we've got describe what is the problem. So let's say you give them a text and then they find out what the problem is. And it could be, this could, and again here we're not saying, okay, use this in a different context per se. Let's just say that, okay, the problem is stated within the text, right? And then they are coming up with steps to solve this problem. Within the text itself, there are no solutions already. There are no solutions given already, but they are coming up with different steps. Like they are not different steps, but they are coming up with steps to solve the problem. What will that be? It's creating. It's so much of creating. I mean, they will need to, let's say, analyze the text, obviously, and maybe even evaluate at this part of describing the complex problem that is faced. But then the last part, the step part, is obviously creating. All right. But in the examination, I'll not give you such complex, vague competencies. All right, we've got create or a test. I wouldn't really give you this, but this is just to like refresh our mind of what we have covered. So create, yes, create. Yeah, it could be both, but especially if we have an objective like this with end, the usage of and always makes things a little bit complex. All right. And this is when we are talking about objective, why we only have to use one action verb. All right. Writing one action verb makes it so much easier to categorize where the objective falls. But then when we add and, for example, and do something else, that makes the objective more complex. So it will fall in different categories. All right. Does that mean learners can be tested 2 or more levels at once? Yes. We could definitely do that. It's possible. Yeah, you could use, then it should allow for us to use more than one category. So when you use and, like whenever we use and within the category, the possibility of it falling on different levels is really high up there. Like it's possible. All right. At the end of the lesson, learners will be able to indicate methods to be used and conclusion reached when solving a difficult problem. Again, this is also another example that makes it a little bit more complex in deciding where does it fall, because there's always like the end part. We'll be able to indicate methods to be used and conclusion reached when solving a difficult problem. So which one do you think? Oh, I mean, this one kind of falls within one category anyways. So learners will be able to indicate methods to be used and indicate conclusion reached when solving a difficult problem. Anyways, I'll just say this one falls a little bit better with creating, because they are indicating methods to solve a difficult problem is almost the same as the one that we just saw. And reaching a conclusion, maybe a conclusion was not given, and then it will be creating. But then again, because they need to reach a conclusion, there is a part of also evaluating what has been presented to them and analysis as well, right? So yeah, I would say that the objectives within our syllabus are a little bit vague, and there's really nothing we can do about that. And just having a better understanding of like what cognitive level it is, then which activities can you possibly do, that you will require to use your own judgment. Is it a double lesson? What do you mean? Is it a double lesson? Our lesson? Oh shit. Sorry. Okay. Language. We have already gone beyond our time and we need to leave. I'm sorry. We are way over time. I'm so sorry. So sorry about that. And this is the last one, by the way. This is the last one that we have yeah. We have just looked at. Oh no. Anyways, we are going to skip. We are done. I'm so sorry. I forgot about time. Yeah. All right. Okay, that's all. We have come to the end of our Bloom taxonomy. And it's something to really think about when you are teaching for better and effective lesson presentation. All right. Thank you so much. We don't even have a conclusion. I'm very sorry about that. Thank you. I will see you in the next class, which is Thursday. All right. Thank you. Bye.